lonely 65-year-old rancher discovers a naked native girl in a tree. Finally, his life begins. He was 65 years old, and most mornings began the same way. The rancher woke before the sun, not because he had to, but because sleep never stayed long with him anymore. The house was quiet, too quiet for a place that once held laughter, arguments, and warm voices calling his name. Now, the only sounds were the ticking clock on the wall and the wind brushing against the wooden boards outside. He sat up slowly, his knees stiff from years of hard work. Time had carved its marks into his body, just as it had into the land he lived on. When he stood, he paused for a moment, letting the dizziness pass. He had learned patience with himself. There was no one rushing him, no one waiting in the kitchen. That thought carried both freedom and sadness. The ranch stretched wide across open land, with rolling fields, fences that ran far into the distance, and a few old trees standing like quiet watchers. It was a beautiful place, but beauty felt different when it was shared with no one. He brewed his coffee, the smell filling the small kitchen. For a moment it almost felt like the past. Almost. He drank alone at the wooden table, looking at a spot on the wall where a picture once hung. He never replaced it after taking it down. Some memories were easier to face when they were not staring back at him. His wife had passed away years ago, taken by an illness that moved faster than anyone expected. After that, the house never felt the same. His children had stayed for a while, but life pulled them away as it often does. Cities, jobs, families of their own. Phone calls became fewer, visits even less. He did not blame them. Still, the silence stayed. After breakfast, he pulled on his boots and stepped outside. The air was cool, carrying the smell of earth and grass. The sky was wide and pale, slowly waking up. He always liked this time of day. It felt honest. No noise, no demands, just him and the land. The ranch was more than property to him. It was his life's work. Every fence post had a story. Every field carried memories of long days under the sun, of working side by side with his wife when they were young and strong. Back then, the land felt alive because they were alive together. Now, it still breathed, but in a quieter way. He walked toward the barn, checking the locks, running his hand over the worn wood. The animals were calm, used to his presence. He spoke to them sometimes, not because he expected answers, but because hearing his own voice reminded him that he was still here. Still part of the world. As he moved through his chores, his thoughts drifted. He wondered how so many years could pass so quickly. He remembered being young, full of plans, believing life would slow down when he got older. Instead, it had sped up, leaving him standing still while everything else moved on. By late morning, the sun was higher, and the wind had picked up. Dark clouds gathered in the distance, leftovers from a storm that had passed during the night. Heavy rain had fallen on the far end of the property, near the old cottonwood trees by the creek. That area was rough and rarely visited. Still, he made a habit of checking it after bad weather. Broken branches, fallen fences, or animals caught in trouble were not uncommon. He saddled his horse and headed out, following a path worn by years of use. The land changed as he rode farther out. The grass grew thicker, the trees taller. The ranch felt older here, as if time moved differently. As he rode, he thought about how alone he truly was. Friends had faded away one by one. Some had moved, others had passed on. A few still lived nearby, but everyone seemed busy with their own lives. He was no one's first call anymore. That realization used to hurt more. Now it sat quietly inside him, like an old ache he had learned to live with. When he reached the creek, he dismounted and led the horse forward. The ground was damp, the air cooler under the shade of the trees. One large cottonwood stood out from the rest, its branches wide and reaching. He had known that tree for decades. It had survived storms, droughts, and time itself. He checked the fence line first. A section had loosened, as he expected. He made a note in his mind to fix it later. As he turned back toward the creek, something caught his attention. It was not a sound exactly, more like a feeling. The kind that tells a person they are not alone. He stopped walking. The rancher looked around slowly. Birds moved in the branches above, and the wind stirred the leaves. Everything looked normal, yet his chest felt tight. He had spent his whole life on this land. He trusted his instincts. He took a few careful steps forward, eyes scanning the area near the old cottonwood. For a moment he thought he saw movement, then nothing. He told himself it was probably an animal, a deer maybe. Still, he did not turn away. Standing there, he felt something he had not felt in a long time, curiosity mixed with purpose. His life had been predictable for years, each day blending into the next. Whatever this was, it was different. He rested his hand against the tree's rough bark. The cottonwood felt solid and familiar, yet the space around it felt charged, as if the air itself was holding its breath. He listened closely. There was a faint rustle above, so slight it could be missed by anyone not paying attention. The rancher frowned, shielding his eyes from the light filtering through the branches. His heart beat faster, not from fear but from awareness. Something was there. Someone, maybe. He did not know why that thought came to him, but it did. For years he had lived surrounded by land and sky, yet untouched by human presence. Now, standing under that tree, he felt the edge of a moment that could change everything, though he did not yet understand how. He took one more step forward, unaware that this quiet morning, so much like all the others, was about to mark the end of his long loneliness. The rancher stood still beneath the cottonwood tree, listening. The wind moved through the leaves again, but this time he was sure there was something else. A soft sound, almost like breathing, came from above. His heart beat faster, not with fear but with concern. This land was empty most of the time. No one climbed trees out here without a reason. He stepped back a little and looked up carefully. At first, he saw nothing but branches and sky. Then his eyes adjusted, and he noticed a shape among the leaves. Someone was there, sitting high on a thick branch, trying to stay hidden. The rancher raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's all right," he said gently, his voice calm and steady. He spoke as if he were talking to a frightened animal, slow and respectful. "I won't come any closer." The figure did not move. For a long moment there was only silence between them. Then the leaves shifted and he saw her clearly. She was a young native woman, clearly an adult, thin and tired, her hair tangled from days outdoors. She looked frightened, her eyes wide, watching his every move. He quickly realized she had no clothing, likely due to an emergency or sudden escape. Understanding the situation, he immediately turned his body away. "I'm turning around," he said softly. "I don't want to scare you." He took off his jacket and laid it on the ground, then stepped back several paces, facing away from the tree. He waited, giving her time and space. The rancher had lived long enough to know that trust could not be rushed. Minutes passed. The wind cooled the sweat on his neck. He wondered how long she had been there, how she had ended up alone on his land. Questions filled his mind, but he kept them to himself. Right now, only her safety mattered. Finally, he heard movement again. Branches creaked softly as she shifted. When he glanced over his shoulder just enough to see, he noticed she had wrapped the jacket around herself. She was still high in the tree, but her grip seemed weaker now, her strength nearly gone. "Can you climb down?" he asked, still keeping his distance. She did not answer at first. Then, in a quiet voice, she spoke words he did not fully understand. Her language was unfamiliar, and her voice shook from exhaustion. He realized communication would be difficult, but he nodded anyway, letting her know he was listening. "It's okay," he said again. "Take your time, I'm here." She tried to move, but her hand slipped slightly and she froze. The rancher felt his chest tighten. He stepped closer, careful and slow, his arms open but not reaching out. "Easy," he said. "I've got you if you need help." She looked down at him, searching his face. Years of hard life had made his expression honest and worn without sharp edges. After a moment she nodded slightly. With great effort she began climbing down. Each movement was slow, painful. When she reached the last few feet, her strength failed and she slipped. The rancher caught her carefully, supporting her weight without holding her longer than needed. He helped her stand, then immediately stepped back again. She was shaking, weak from hunger and fear. He pointed toward the creek. "Water," he said, miming drinking. She nodded. He led her slowly, keeping his pace matched to hers. At the water's edge, he let her drink first, turning away once more to give privacy. He found himself acting on instinct, the same instincts that once guided him as a father and husband. Those parts of him, long quiet, were awake again. After she drank, he offered some food from his saddlebag. Simple things. She ate carefully, as if unsure when her next meal would come. He watched from a respectful distance, ready to help if she fell. When she finished, she looked at him and spoke again, this time in broken English. Her voice was soft but clearer now. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, feeling something warm settle in his chest. It surprised him how much that single word meant. They sat there for a while, not speaking. The creek moved gently beside them. Birds returned to the branches above. The tension in the air slowly faded. After some time, she began to explain. Her words came slowly, mixed with pauses and gestures. She told him she was from a nearby native community. Something had gone wrong. She had been running, hiding, trying to stay alive in the wilderness. Her clothing had been lost during her escape. Fear had driven her into the tree when she heard animals during the night. The rancher listened without interrupting. He did not ask for details that would cause her pain. He only nodded, showing understanding where words failed. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will hurt you on my land." She looked at him carefully, as if weighing his promise. At last she nodded again. He helped her onto his horse, making sure she was steady and comfortable. He walked beside them the entire way back, holding the reins, speaking softly whenever she seemed unsure. The ride felt different from all the others he had taken over the years. The land around him looked the same, but he felt changed inside. When they reached the house, he guided her inside and showed her a place to sit. He brought clean clothes and placed them nearby, then stepped out of the room to give her privacy. He busied himself in the kitchen, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared food. It had been a long time since he cooked for someone else. As he waited, he realized something important. His days of quiet loneliness had been broken, not by choice, but by fate. This unexpected meeting had brought another human being into his world, someone who needed help, someone who trusted him. For the first time in many years, the rancher did not feel invisible. He felt useful. He felt needed. And though he did not yet know how this story would unfold, he knew one thing for certain. His life had already begun to change. The first night passed quietly, but sleep did not come easily for either of them. The rancher lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the house mixed with something new. There was another presence under his roof now. It felt strange, but not uncomfortable. More like a long-closed door had been opened. He worried about her. Was she warm enough? Had she eaten enough? His mind moved in circles, just like it used to when his children were small and sick in the night. He had not felt this kind of concern in many years. It made him feel older and younger at the same time. In the other room, the woman sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in clean clothes and a blanket. The simple warmth of the house felt almost unreal to her. She had spent days in fear, hiding, listening to every sound as if it could be danger. Now, the quiet was different. It felt safe, but safety was something she had learned not to trust easily. She listened to the sounds of the house, the soft creak of wood, the distant wind outside. Her body was tired, but her mind stayed alert. Still, little by little, the warmth and stillness pulled her toward rest. Before she fell asleep, she whispered a quiet word of thanks, not knowing exactly who she was thanking but feeling it deeply. In the morning, sunlight filled the kitchen. The rancher was already awake, moving slowly but with purpose. He prepared a simple breakfast and set 2 plates on the table. For a moment he stopped and looked at them. 2 plates. Such a small thing, yet it felt powerful. When she entered the room, he greeted her with a gentle nod and stepped back, giving her space. She sat across from him, holding the cup of warm drink carefully as if it might disappear. They ate in silence at first. It was not an awkward silence. It was careful, respectful. After breakfast, he showed her around the house. He spoke slowly, using simple words, pointing when needed. She listened closely, nodding, learning the layout, the rules of this new, safe place. He showed her where to wash, where to rest, and where she could sit if she wanted to be alone. As the day went on, her strength slowly returned. She helped with small tasks, folding cloth, carrying light items. He did not ask her to work, but she wanted to help. It made her feel human again, not just someone being rescued. Outside, the ranch waited unchanged. The animals needed care, the fences needed checking. The rancher hesitated before heading out. Leaving her alone felt wrong, but he also knew she needed time and quiet. "I'll be nearby," he said, pointing outside. "If you need me." She nodded, understanding more from his tone than his words. As he worked, his thoughts kept returning to the house. He moved through his tasks more slowly than usual, listening for any sound that might carry across the land. Every so often, he looked back toward the house, surprised by how much it mattered to him now. When he returned, he found her sitting on the porch, looking out across the fields. She seemed calmer, her shoulders less tense. He sat a short distance away, not crowding her. For a while, they simply watched the land together. The wind moved the grass like waves. Clouds drifted slowly overhead. Moments like this had once been part of his everyday life, shared with someone else. He had forgotten how comforting quiet companionship could be. Later, she began to speak more. Her English was broken, but she tried. She told him about her community, about growing up surrounded by people, stories, and traditions. She spoke of laughter, of music, of evenings by the fire. Her eyes softened when she talked about those memories. Then her voice grew quieter. She spoke of fear, of feeling unsafe, of running without knowing where she was going. She did not share every detail, and he did not push her. Some stories need time, some wounds need space. "I hid," she said simply. "I climbed tree. I was scared." He nodded. "You did what you had to do." Those words seemed to mean more to her than he expected. She looked at him with surprise, then relief. No blame, no questions, just understanding. Days passed like this. Slow, gentle days. She rested, ate well, and slept without fear. He returned to his routines, but now they felt different. The ranch no longer felt empty. There was movement, quiet conversation, shared meals. They learned each other's rhythms. He learned when she needed silence and when she was ready to talk. She learned his habits, his early mornings, his pauses when memories surfaced. She noticed the way his hands shook slightly when he poured hot water, and how he smiled without realizing it when the animals came close. One afternoon, she asked to help more. He hesitated, then agreed, giving her small, safe tasks. Together, they worked in the garden. The sun warmed their backs as they planted and pulled weeds. Their movements slowly fell into a natural pattern. As they worked, he felt something shift inside him. He was not just surviving his days anymore, he was sharing them. He found himself laughing once, surprised by the sound. It felt rusty, unused, but real. At night, he slept more deeply. The silence no longer pressed so hard on his chest. He felt tired in a good way, the way he used to after a full day of meaningful work. She also began to change. Her eyes held less fear. She smiled more easily. Sometimes she hummed softly while she worked, a tune from her past. The sound filled the spaces of the house that had long been quiet. Still, both of them knew this could not last forever. She had a place she belonged to, people who would worry about her. He did not say it out loud, but the thought of her leaving brought a tight feeling to his chest. He reminded himself that helping her was never meant to be about keeping her. One evening, as they sat by the window watching the sun set, she spoke again. "You alone long time," she said gently. He nodded. "Yes, long time." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You good man." The words were simple, but they landed deeply. He looked away, feeling emotion rise unexpectedly. He had not heard words like that directed at him in years. Helping her had given him something he did not know he had lost, a sense of worth beyond routine. He was not just an old man passing time anymore. He was someone who mattered to another human being. As the stars appeared outside, he realized that healing does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, through shared meals, patient listening, and simple kindness. And in helping her find safety again, he had begun to find something for himself too. Neither of them knew what the next days would bring. But for now, in that quiet house on a wide stretch of land, two lost souls were slowly finding their way forward together. Time moved gently on the ranch, marked not by dates on a calendar, but by small changes that felt important. The woman grew stronger each day. Her steps became steadier, her voice more confident. She no longer startled at every sound. The rancher noticed these changes quietly, never pointing them out, but feeling proud in a way he had not felt in years. One morning she asked if she could walk a little farther on the land. He agreed, offering to go with her, but she shook her head gently. Try alone," she said. He understood. Healing was not just about being safe. It was also about finding confidence again. He watched from the porch as she walked slowly across the grass, stopping now and then to look around. The wide land did not seem to frighten her anymore. Instead, she stood taller, breathing deeply, as if reminding herself that she was still alive and free. When she returned, she smiled. It was a real smile, not careful or forced. That smile stayed with him the rest of the day. As the days passed, they spoke more openly. Their conversations were still simple but fuller. She asked about his life, about the ranch, about the people who once lived there. At first, he answered briefly, unsure how much to share. But she listened with such honest attention that he found himself talking more than he planned. He told her about his wife, how they had built this life together. He spoke of long days of work, shared dreams, and quiet evenings that once felt complete. His voice softened when he talked about the past. It still hurt, but the pain felt less heavy when spoken aloud. She listened without interrupting, her eyes kind and steady. When he finished, she placed her hand over her heart and nodded. "She's still here," she said gently. "In you." Those words surprised him. He had spent so long trying not to feel the loss that he had forgotten love does not disappear just because someone is gone. That realization stayed with him, warming him in a quiet way. One afternoon, she asked about his children. He hesitated, then spoke honestly. He told her where they lived, what they did, how proud he was of them even though they were far away. He admitted he did not talk to them often, not because he did not care, but because he did not want to bother them. She frowned slightly at that. "They miss you," she said. "Even if busy." Her words planted a thought in his mind. That evening, after she had gone to rest, he sat at the table and stared at the old phone. He had not called his son in months. Slowly, he picked it up. The call was short and a little awkward, but it ended with plans to talk again soon. When he hung up, his hands were shaking, but his heart felt lighter. Meanwhile, she began to speak more about her own people. She described the land she came from, the elders who taught her stories, the sense of belonging she once took for granted. As she spoke, he realized how deeply she missed her community. Even though she felt safe here, this was not where her roots were. One evening she said quietly, "I think time soon I go back." The words hit him harder than he expected. He had known this moment would come. Still, he nodded. "Yes," he said, "when you're ready." They talked about how to make it happen safely. He suggested contacting someone from her community, someone she trusted. At first, she was unsure, fear still lingering. But together they made a plan, slowly, carefully. The next day, he drove her to a place where there was better signal. He stayed nearby but gave her privacy. When she finished the call, her eyes were wet but her face held relief. "They look for me," she said. "They worried." "That's good," he replied. "Very good." The days that followed were filled with preparation. He helped her gather what she would need. Clean clothes, food for the journey, small items to remind her of this place where she had healed. He did these things quietly, pushing down the sadness that rose each time he thought of the house becoming silent again. She sensed his mood and one afternoon sat beside him on the porch. "You helped me live," she said simply. "I never forget." He swallowed hard. "You helped me too," he replied. "More than you know." They shared a long moment of silence, watching the sun move slowly across the sky. It was not an empty silence. It was full of meaning. On her last evening at the ranch, they cooked together. It was nothing special, just a simple meal, but they took their time. They ate slowly, talking about small things, laughing once or twice. The house felt warm and alive. Later, she brought out a small handmade item she had been working on quietly during her stay. She placed it in his hands. "For you," she said, "so you remember, not alone." He looked at it carefully, feeling emotion rise again. He did not trust his voice to speak, so he nodded and held it close. That night, sleep came easily for both of them, though for different reasons. She slept knowing she would soon be with her people again. He slept knowing that even when she left, something inside him had changed forever. In the morning, the air felt different. The sky was clear, and the land seemed to hold its breath. He drove her part of the way to where her community would meet her. The ride was quiet. Words felt unnecessary. When they arrived, people were waiting, faces filled with relief and concern. She turned to him before stepping away. "You saved me," she said softly. He shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just helped." She smiled, then stepped forward, welcomed by familiar arms. He watched until she disappeared into the group, then turned back toward his truck. The drive home felt long but not empty. When he returned to the ranch, the silence was there again, but it felt different now. It no longer felt like a weight pressing down on him. It felt like space. Space for memories, for connection, for new beginnings. That evening he sat on the porch alone, holding the small gift she had given him. The land stretched out before him, wide and quiet. He realized that loneliness had not ended his life, and age had not closed his story. Helping someone else had opened his heart again. And even though the ranch was quiet once more, it was no longer empty. The days after she left felt strange at first. The rancher woke early, as he always did, but the house felt different. Not heavier, just quieter in a new way. The silence no longer felt sharp. It felt calm, like the quiet after a long conversation when everything important has already been said. He made breakfast for one and smiled softly at himself when he realized he still set out 2 cups before correcting it. Instead of feeling sad, he felt thankful. That small habit reminded him that he had shared his life again, even if only for a short time. He stepped outside and breathed in the cool morning air. The land looked the same as it always had, yet he felt different standing on it now. For years he had walked these fields feeling like time was slowly closing around him. Now it felt open again, wide, full of possibility. He returned to his routines, but with a new energy. He fixed fences he had ignored for months. He cleaned parts of the barn he had avoided because they reminded him of the past. Each task felt meaningful again. Not because someone was watching, but because he felt connected to life. Sometimes, memories of her returned suddenly. The sound of her quiet humming, the careful way she spoke, the strength she carried even after everything she had been through. Instead of pushing those memories away, he welcomed them. They reminded him that kindness had value, that small choices could change lives. One afternoon, he sat at the kitchen table and looked at the phone again. This time, he did not hesitate. He called his daughter. The conversation was longer than the last one. They talked about small things at first, then deeper ones. He told her about the ranch, about how he was feeling, about how he missed her. When the call ended, his chest felt warm, full. Over the next weeks, he reached out more. Old friends, neighbors he had not spoken to in years. Some conversations were short, others lasted longer. Not everyone responded, but enough did to remind him that he was still part of a larger world. He also began to open his land in small ways. A neighbor asked if he could help with a community gathering, and the rancher agreed. The day people arrived, the ranch felt alive in a way it had not for decades. Voices filled the air. Laughter echoed across the fields. Children ran where silence once lived. He watched it all from the porch, his heart full. He did not feel like an outsider. He felt like someone who belonged. At night, he often held the small handmade gift she had given him. It rested on the table beside his bed, a quiet reminder of a turning point in his life. He did not think of it as the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new one. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The land changed colors, then changed again. Through it all, he felt steady. When loneliness returned, as it sometimes did, it no longer felt endless. He knew now that connection was possible at any age in unexpected ways. One morning, a letter arrived. He recognized the name immediately. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside were simple words, written carefully. She told him she was safe, back with her people. She told him she was learning again, laughing again. She thanked him, not just for shelter, but for seeing her as a human being when she felt invisible. At the end, she wrote one line that stayed with him long after he folded the letter. "Because of you, I believe in kindness again." He sat quietly for a long time after reading it. Tears came, but they were not painful. They were cleansing, like rain after a long, dry season. That afternoon, he walked out to the old cottonwood tree by the creek. The place where everything had changed. He stood beneath it, resting his hand against the rough bark, just as he had that first day. He looked up at the branches moving gently in the wind. "Thank you," he whispered, though he was not sure to whom. As he walked back toward the house, he realized something important. His life had not begun again because someone needed his help. It had begun again because he allowed himself to care, to feel, to open his heart after years of guarding it. He was still 65. His body still ached, time still moved forward, but age no longer felt like an ending. It felt like a chapter filled with wisdom, patience, and quiet strength. That evening, as the sun set over the ranch, the land glowed softly. The rancher sat on the porch, watching the light fade, feeling at peace. He knew there would be hard days ahead. Life always carried them, but he also knew he would not face them empty anymore. He had learned that purpose does not disappear with loss. It waits, sometimes quietly, sometimes for years, and sometimes it arrives in the most unexpected way, reminding a lonely old rancher that it is never too late to begin again.